Thank you, listeners, for joining us for today's Elko Live here on KELK. It's Tuesday, and so that means it's the day that we talk all about Elko City news and issues. And in advance of this afternoon's regular council meeting, that'll begin at 4 o'clock today, we do have our city manager, Jan Baum, and she's going to be kind of patiently waiting because we have two other rock stars from Elko City staff are joining us today from the Development Department. Our City Development Department coordinates with planning and utility. They review building plans, parcel maps, subdivision plans. They provide lots of information and recommendations to developers and owners, and it's really specifically to ensure that these projects are successful. So that's why it's always important to include the City Development Department before you start working on projects or even something small around the house like a fence. And with that in mind, we have Adeline Thibbault, who's the environmental coordinator from the city, alongside Michelle Rambo, who's the development manager. And both these women very accomplished, and they wear lots of hats on behalf of the city. So I'd like to welcome you both. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Michelle. And we also thank Adeline Thibbault for being here today, Addie. And you're going to start by giving us an update in the Cleanup Greenup. Is that right?
Hi. Yes. Thanks for having us today. Yes, Cleanup Greenup was April 22nd, and it was fabulous. It was a great success this year. It was our 20th anniversary. We had 833 volunteers this year, which almost doubled last year. It was fantastic. 91 in Spring Creek, 4 Osino, 8 in Lamoille, and 730 in Elko. There were 595 adults, and the kids came back. There are 238 youth. Last year, there wasn't even 100 kids. So it was very heartwarming to get the scout troops and all the kids to come back out. So I was very pleased at the numbers.
That's a great recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had 56 different teams. There were some really big teams from like Livingstone's, and Robert Howard had a huge team, Nevada Gold Mines. And then there were some businesses that have really big teams, families, clubs, groups, and then there were single people too, and just neighbors that got together and cleaned up just their neighborhood. It was fantastic. A lot of new, fresh faces too, people that who had never done it before. So I was very pleased with that.
Oh, Addie, that tells us that people care about the community. And again, they're coming back after a COVID absence, certainly. And they saw lots of opportunities to, take advantage of free landfill. Usually a lot of tons of landfill disposed that day, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was over 200 tons.
That is really impressive.
Amazing.
And then vouchers went out to all those volunteers.
Yes.
To use
all
for the
the
week.
Adults. Yep.
Very nice.
Yep.
So now that you see that you're rebounding nicely and you planted some trees, right?
Yes.
You got that done.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And took in some errant medicines, unused prescriptions. Those things were turned in.
Yep.
So,
that was
Addie,
very successful
yeah,
too.
If people want to start thinking, I know it's just we're not even a month away, but from having this latest successful event, but there are things that people can do to help plan for next year or to continue this effort, right?
Definitely. Well, and we have 2 free landfill days a year as well. So there's one in the spring and then there's one in the fall as well. And the fall one we don't have a big event, of course, that's just in the spring, but there is a second free landfill day. So you can, wait and throw your tires away, in the fall as well. It's usually the beginning of November. But yes, we will be starting to plan next year soon, and it's usually the end of April, and right around Earth Day, either the last or second to last Saturday is when we try to schedule it. It's fantastic. It's a great event.
What a great, and again, just the whole community involvement, whether it's civic clubs, as you said, the one Mr. Howard brought 80 people on his own.
At least.
Oh,
We
wow.
lost count.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That's a team cleanup, green up for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a ton. They were great.
So, and that just really inspires the opportunity to do other good projects and to continue, in the downtown redevelopment area and the corridor, places like that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if people have questions or need more information, should they contact you about either cleanup, green up, or just in general, Addie?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, anytime. Yes. My contact information is on the website. I can also be reached I'm the environmental coordinator, so my email is envco@elkocity.nv or elkocitynv.gov, excuse me.
And it's all on the website too.
It is.
If people need more information. And
Yes.
and Addie, this is it's a good introduction too to, if people have questions or concerns. I wrote down, because I went to the website, the goal of the city's development department and the environmental department is to improve natural environment, to provide healthy water, air, and land for both visitors and residents, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Of course.
So if
Simply.
someone's concerned about, say maybe pesticides getting in the stormwater drain system, should they contact your office?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay.
We take all
right.
that stuff very seriously and look into everything. And if homeowners want to get rid of things like that too, you can. There's a free program at the landfill, and you can call and make an appointment, so it doesn't end up in our waterways and disposed of improperly. So we recycle and dispose of all that household hazardous waste properly too. So.
Sometimes people come across the old crate of something if they're cleaning out Grandpa's garage, or right?
Yep.
Okay, and so you're the call to make.
Yep.
Okay.
Or the landfill too.
Okay.
They can help you as well. But
Good to know.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. So don't
Anytime.
Yeah. Thanks, Addie.
Of course.
And I know you'll be presenting this update at the city council meeting, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Sounds like a plan. You will be ready for it for sure. So 2023 20th anniversary cleanup, green up, a huge success. A lot of waste disposed of. It's made safer, cleaner, and more beautiful. So congratulations to you and all the volunteers.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So that gives us a perfect segue to talk about Michelle, and she's got a big project. I got to know more about the work that Michelle Rambo does. Recently, during the most recent city council meeting, she gave an excellent presentation on what a lot of people have been concerned about, Michelle, and that is obviously the Elko Inn there at 8th and Idaho Street. So did you want to give us an update on that? I know you're going to present to city council today.
Yeah, I was going to give them a little update.
I'm not hearing her. Let me see. I might have to trade microphones. I'm so sorry. That, we had it checked out, but I don't think it's working. I apologize. Whoops, sorry, Trina. It's okay. I'll have to get that one fixed. All right. Thank you, Michelle. We're just playing a little switcheroo in the seats. Yeah. All right. You guys are good at musical chairs. Excellent. And Michelle knows her way around a microphone, which is very helpful. So thank you.
Okay.
So Michelle Rambo is the development manager, and you also do your share of assisting in the code enforcement. Is that fair to say?
Yes, code enforcement falls under the development department.
Okay.
So I have a code enforcement officer, part-time, who does a really good job of taking in complaints and inspecting and following up on things. And she's been extremely helpful in the last 6 months or so that she's been here.
Yeah, that's great. And that's just a part-time position approved by the council, but who knows, with this kind of progress, it could end up being full-time.
I hope someday.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's fair too, Michelle, we were just discussing before even going on the air that for the most part, people don't try to be a nuisance. They don't realize maybe that something that they're doing inadvertently is actually a nuisance according to city code.
Right. And, a lot of it's just reaching out to them, letting them know, something is wrong or something needs to be fixed or changed. And once they find out, we have a really good success rate. We've got maybe 85 to 90% of the complaints that get settled right away with no problem.
Oh, that's great news.
Yeah, it's just a matter of letting people know. They just, got
Just
so
to
much
know.
going on in life that you can't always keep up with all these weird rules.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. I mean, and some things get developed or even get, modified. Codes can be updated over time. And I think, too, that it's really interesting. On the city's website, there are all these great little panels that say, frequently asked questions. For example, I'll just start that you may not have known that in the city of Elko that there are no more than 2 unregistered vehicles that can be stored, I guess, or kept on private property. Is that right, Michelle?
Right.
Yeah.
We do have limits for not only unregistered, but also abandoned vehicles. So, yeah, and that's one of our bigger complaints that we get.
Oh, that's good that we started with that then too. So, and then of all the other ones, I mean, this one's pretty common, but especially in neighborhoods where you have a lot of, elderly people, they like to walk their dogs. Sidewalks are there to be safe. A lot of children play in the sidewalks.
Yeah, we have some, in the older neighborhoods of town, before cars were, everywhere. The driveways may not have been long enough to accommodate some of today's, especially the big trucks. So sometimes you run into a situation where a car is blocking the sidewalk. And so we just need to let them know that that's not ideal. And if they could find some other way to put their vehicle either in a garage or on the street or somewhere else, that would work a little better.
All right. And that's, again, just a reminder, because it keeps people safe so they can walk on the sidewalks. They don't have to walk into the road. And then this is another big one, right? Especially this time of year.
Yes, the RVs and trailers parked on the street. There is actually an NRS a law that vehicles cannot be parked on city streets longer than 72 hours. So yes, with the RVs and the boats and everything, we get quite a few parked on the street this time of year. You can do it to load them up and unload them when you get back, but storing them there for the rest of the summer is not the greatest. It blocks visibility, and it can cause some traffic hazard, especially when the ones that are parked on the corners.
Yeah, that can. When you think about a vehicle coming around the corner, or even children riding their bicycles, I mean, I've seen some of these near misses too with these oversized vehicles. So that's one area. Another one, we just mentioned it briefly with Addie. Mm-hmm. That's about discharge. Only storm water is allowed in storm drains, and that means the gutter. So when you mop your floor in your house, you don't take the cleaning fluid out and dump it in the gutter, right?
Right. Yeah. We try and keep the gutter just water as much as possible.
Yep. Or washing the car or anything. I know. And it's important because this goes into our eventual drinking water supply, but also the habitat that supports the fish and wildlife, right?
Right.
So, yeah, it goes directly to the river.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, Addie adds that. So, yes, so it's not treated. So think about that if you're sudsing up your car and then you're dumping it down the gutter and then it goes into the Humboldt River. So, and also, let's talk about this because we are into the onset of fire season.
Right. Unkept vegetation. Basically, that's just letting the weeds grow. Maybe they're dead because the house is vacant, or they just got out of control for some reason. It does pose a fire hazard. So we do ask that those be kept under control, mowed, or trimmed back. And obviously, that's one of your partners that you work with, the city fire department. They could become concerned. So right, we work with the fire department and other various departments quite a lot on these things. All right. So the weeds have gotten too tall. You need to mow the lawn. And again, none of this is to criticize anybody, because sometimes it's also a sign that someone needs help, right, Michelle? Could be. Yeah. So think about our friends with the county and social services, that if you have a house in the neighborhood that suddenly it's become overgrown, or the garbage isn't being taken out, or the mail's piling up, there could be something wrong inside. So, right. Yeah. So you could be doing someone a big favor by reporting that as well. And this next one is about junk or abandoned vehicles. Yeah, it's kind of the same, along the same lines as parking the RVs on the street. If you got an abandoned car, we just ask that it not be parked on the street. It can be towed. We work with the police department on that. There's a certain time frame that they give, and if it hasn't been moved, then it gets on the tow list. So it's just trying to keep the streets as clear as possible, so that there's not as many safety hazards. Right. And so if you see an abandoned vehicle, it's pretty evident. I think there's one on Court Street that the tires are flat, right? Mm-hmm. And the windows might actually have sort of that sort of glazed look to them. There might be stuff stored in the vehicle. The big giveaway is no license plates, right? Right. Yeah. Between the tires and license plates and the windows, you can usually tell pretty well which ones are abandoned and which ones aren't. And the city will make an effort to identify the owner if possible? Yes, we always try. If it's parked in front of a certain house, we'll contact that house, see if it's theirs, try and get in touch with them. If it's just on the side of a road somewhere, the police department will check the tags and and see if they can find an owner that way.
Yeah, sometimes they're stolen and they're from out of state. So those owners are grateful to either get them back, at least, find, know what happened to their property in that case. So,
Right.
So that's another good reason to report an abandoned vehicle that's in your neighborhood. And then this is also the time of year people like to clean up any kind of debris around their yard, tree, branches, that kind of thing.
Yeah, burn permits are pretty common this time of year. We work with the fire department just to let people know that you need a burn permit if you're going to burn your weeds or your rubbish that you've got around your property.
And you have to get that in advance.
Yes.
Yeah. They're going to come and inspect. And it's kind of fun if you have kids because they're like, the fire truck is here. The fire truck is here. And then you can take them out, meet the firefighters and charge up the hose, and they'll walk through everything with you and make sure your burn pile's not too close to any structures or anything like that. So yeah, it's just a cool way to keep safe, but call in advance. Do you call the city fire department? Do you know Michelle or Addie, or do we call the county for the burn permits?
It's the city fire department.
Okay, city within the city limits. Okay, So contact the city fire department. And and then this one, people might be surprised to learn, but let's talk about disrepair.
Disrepair. So structures that have dangerous conditions. Maybe the stairs are broken, or the porch or the patio is falling apart, and somebody could fall through it. So there's a list of things that we can do through the building department to work with homeowners on those issues and try and keep everybody safe. Again, it all comes down to safety. It's kind of the big word.
Exactly. And I'm sure you come up against this, both Addie and Michelle and your code enforcement officers, that people say, well, it's my property. I should be able to do what I want. And I don't think anybody argues that. It's just the point is that if it becomes a hazard to someone else.
Right. Yeah. If it's something small and it's, I always say, as long as it's not in immediate in danger to anybody, we'll work with you. We'll try and find a solution. But it does come to a point where sometimes, and there's situations that we need to get the building department involved, and the Elko Inn is currently one of those that we're working with on that.
Okay, and we're going to switch gears and talk about the Elko Inn too, because that's sort of the big lesson in what you can and can't do with private property, even though it's private property, when it starts to impact your neighbors and invites crime and other other opportunities. And then obviously you would hope that people would know about hazardous materials. We've had a few of those scares where, like, someone's cleaning out grandpa's garage and they find old dynamite. So nobody's going to get in trouble as long as you make the right call. And let's see, outdoor storage. Oh, this might be a big one, just because sometimes people let things pile up, right? In a carport or on a porch or something like that, Michelle?
Yeah. We've got a lot of instances of people just piling trash in a corner of their yard. Once it gets to the point where it starts attracting bugs or rats or cats that are ripping the bags open, then it becomes an issue that we need to worry about and get it cleaned up. All
right. So any kind of storage that is also, and it could also be a fire hazard too, because even if it's your property and you don't think it's a fire hazard, it could be a fire hazard for the neighborhood, right?
Yeah, and it definitely could be. We've dealt with some people that have a lot of wood on their property, and that becomes a fire hazard as well. So yeah, it's kind of just making sure that everything is, I'm going to say safe again, but
yeah, that's the whole thing.
I feel like I'm repeating myself, but that's
and sometimes it just takes a reminder. It's about safety. So, and then probably, and I keep saying, well, this might be the last one, but you have all these great slides and they're available on the city website. And again, people can always ask questions, but this would seem like an obvious one, but just like parking on the sidewalk.
Right. No driving on the sidewalk. Yeah, it's the same idea. You don't want to be either hitting somebody, obviously, or being in the way of something that you shouldn't be in the way of. So it's just Another safety issue.
Yep. So just think about it, that those sidewalks are for pedestrians and, even bicycles. We try to encourage people to bicycle on those roadways. I know it's hard with little kids. You don't want to put little kids, in training wheels, places like that. So probably a good segue. No semi-truck parking. You can't. Oh, another one is no blocking alleys. Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's another one we have quite a few reports on, is people parking their cars in the alley and blocking it.
Mm-hmm. So if it's on private property and it's in your garage, that's where it should be. But if it's sticking out in the alley and the garbage truck can't get through, because I know I've done that. I brought the groceries in and I forgot and I left the car in the alley, and then the Elko sanitation calls and you get so embarrassed because you're just like, I'm so sorry, I'll move it right now. So that can happen. Noise. That's probably the last thing we can end with before we talk about Elko Inn.
Yeah, noise is a tricky one because it's the definition of noise is subjective. It's what one person might think of noise is not what another person considers noise. So that's one of those ones where there's a lot of gray area in between. Mm-hmm. But if there is an issue and people feel that there is something that's really loud, we can certainly look into it and find out what the situation is.
Yeah, especially if it's ongoing or persistent. And Michelle, that's everything that you've talked about too can be something that people could resolve, within a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk to your neighbor, certainly. Because one person's noise is another person's music. One person's drum practice is another person's nuisance.
Right.
Yes.
And we do encourage neighbors to try and work some of those things out themselves.
Yeah, because, maybe the parents didn't know that the couple down the street has a newborn and they're trying to nap and they let their son, the band, practice in the garage, right? So there could be all kinds of good reasons for noises and things like that, or talking to them about parking in the alleys, especially if they're new to the community. So that brings us to another point, though. Maybe when the perception is that folks aren't as involved with their property as they need to be, and it comes to this point where on the City Council agenda today, the city is seeking an official public nuisance complaint was submitted to the city clerk, and a presentation was given to the council on April 25th. And Michelle, you've been working on this, you and your department and all of your colleagues, since at least June of last year, right?
Yeah, it was late June, early July. We've been working with it. Mostly started off with just some small items, trash in the alley and scattered around the property, but it's gotten progressively worse over the months. So now we're dealing with it, an actual nuisance complaint.
And there are about, 30, 40 units in that motel complex? Something like that.
Something like that. I don't know the exact number, but yeah.
8th and Idaho Street. So it's a significant property. It's impacting neighbors, residential, other commercial properties. The owner is out of state, so that makes it even more difficult. I think that some of us were really surprised, Michelle, when we learned that there's no water to the building. So how can people occupy a building when there's no water?
That's a good question. They're not supposed to. But they have been. There's still people living over there. We're trying to work that issue out as well. But yeah, that is one of those things that we're working with building department on to is that a life safety issue that we need to address right away? And how we go about that. And there's lots of lawyers involved and other legal things
at this point. And so they owe about $10,000 to $12,000 on their water bills. And we heard at the council meeting, Michelle, that you can't just evict people. Now, we don't want to encourage this because there are specific landlord-tenant laws. Things have to be in writing. There is a process for evicting someone from your property. But as you said, the city is pursuing every angle right now.
Yeah, we've got a lot of things going on in multiple different directions with this. So we've got a lot of very busy people right now looking into different avenues of how we can address some of these issues. And I think we're getting to a point where we're pretty close. We kind of have a plan. So stay tuned.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Absolutely. And as you said, not just hours and hours, but months and months of consecutive work on this project. It's consumed a lot of city time.
It has. And I always tell people code enforcement is very slow. It's not going to happen overnight unless you get the cooperative neighbor who moves their car next day. But the real nitty-gritty code enforcement when you get to these situations is very slow. And people have to be patient. I know that some of the neighbors are, having constant issues with the property, but yeah, if they're patient, that it'll get there eventually.
And we know from city police, they were included in your presentation, they're also working diligently
Yes.
to keep neighbors safe.
Yes, they're out patrolling all the time, and due to some recent events, they're going to be patrolling even more coming in the next few weeks. So I'm constantly in contact with the chief of police and individual officers, keeping track of what's going on over there.
Well, thank you for that, Michelle. And I think that you hinted at something that we also need for people, because they may get frustrated, but some of these people are becoming very assertive and aggressive, right?
Yes, we have had reports of some trespassing and confronting some neighbors. So that's being addressed as well.
All right. And when there are those kind of violations, again, the police will respond immediately. That's when you dial 911.
Absolutely. Anybody who runs into a situation, call the 911. If you find somebody on your property, if they're stealing something, call 911, get a report done, and that helps us in the end with the code enforcement issues to get the problem fixed.
I did want to put in a plug for Elko Dispatch, because I think, and this was years, probably even decades ago, I think there was at one time sort of a feeling that if we called dispatch, we were bothering dispatch. That is not the case. They are so kind, so patient, so professional at Elko Dispatch, and they want to know. That's the only way we can fix these problems, right?
Right. It's one of the best most helpful ways to fix the problem. It gives a tangible measure of how much city resources and police resources are going into one property. So it's very important that the police are made aware of every incident that happens.
Yeah, and this department is in constant communication. Police, the development department, code enforcement, because they all work hand in hand. So. Thanks for reassuring people. You can use the non-emergency number if you don't, if it's not an emergency, but you want to report suspicious activity, some problems, you can use the 775-777-7300. Yeah. So that's the number to get non-emergency dispatch. And again, if they're busy, they'll say, if this is an emergency, or they'll say, if it's not an emergency, can you hold, please? And then just hold on and they'll get right back to you. So, yeah.
They also have a form on their website that you can go in and fill out. So you, if you don't want to talk to anybody, you could just do it that way.
Oh, that's even better. And a lot of people are doing that now. And I think as our dispatch system advances, people will start being able to text and send photos and videos, and that'll help too. That's part of the plan. So, well, Michelle, you're going to make a presentation today, and you're going to update the council, so anybody can follow along on that. Yeah,
absolutely.
elkocity.com, and you can go to meeting. I just want to make sure that I hope you'll come back on the radio. You've done a great job, and I think it really helps people understand that there are a team of people working behind the scenes on behalf of residents, taxpayers, and visitors.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't look like it because it is all behind the scenes, but we are there, we're working, we're trying our best to get it done as fast as possible.
Anything else that you want to know before we close with you today, Michelle?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Did we get to a lot of stuff today?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. And I know I shouldn't say I know, because I hope you had a good experience and that you'll be back, because we love hearing from our city staff. And again, it just reminds people of this great resource that we have.
Sure. I'll come back anytime.
Thank you, Michelle. Michelle Rambo she is the development manager for the city of Elko, and environmental coordinator Adeline Thibbault. And I think Jen will just have you slide in to kind of wrap it up and just remind everybody that the Elko City Council meeting is at 4:00 today. While she's getting situated, I'm just going to let her slide in there. And you can remain standing. Hey,
okay.
That's just fine with me. And Jan Baum is our city manager. Meeting is at 4:00 this afternoon. And your staff did a fabulous job. Did you learn a lot of things too?
I always learn a lot from everybody at the city of Elko, and I just think that just having Addie here and Michelle, just continually enforcing that. We have a great team at the city, and there are several departments working together all the time, and to help our residents with safety and education, and that's what we're here for. And so if people do have questions, you can go to the Elko City website, or they can always give us a call, and we're happy to always educate.
Thank you, Jan. Again, you have a great department and various people who are hard at work on these projects. Well, this afternoon, the council will meet at 4. As we mentioned, there will be an official update on the Elko Inn, the status of that, and the city's working diligently to now to extract this public nuisance. I guess that's fair to say.
Yes, again, it's just like everything else. There are a lot of departments working hand in hand on this situation and hoping that it can be resolved, and for the safety and and the best for the neighbors and the residents of Elko. I mean, we don't want our residents to be have any safety concerns or, like you were just saying, any other nuisances, whether it be garbage or there's so many ways that things can be a nuisance, and law enforcement is a big one. So for sure we want to make sure our residents are safe.
So follow along, and of course we'll keep updating the news on that situation of the Elko Inn there at 8th and Idaho Street. It's an ongoing City Council agenda item. One more thing before we send you off is that there's also an interesting discussion, item G, and that would be a volunteer from the community is going to solicit Congressman Amadei's office. Maybe bring us up to date on the Ericart Boulevard roadway, the extension. We had some pretty high hopes for that, Jan.
Oh, we always have really high hopes for Ericart Boulevard connector. The community as a whole, I think everybody in northeastern Nevada or the county of Elko and the city of Elko, that is a very important connector for our city. And we constructed Ericart Bridge many, many years ago in anticipation of this connector, and it still hasn't happened. And so part of it that brought it to light was one of our ARPA projects is to put a water line in as a secondary source for the hospital and for the south side of Elko. And while we were doing some some engineering for this project, of course, the Ericart Boulevard connector came into light again. And so, yes, we have a resident that is very passionate about this, and he wants to approach some of our congressional leaders to see if we can get funding or help with funding for this project. And it's exciting, but at the same time, I'm trying not to get my hopes up too high, but it would be an amazing thing for this entire community to have that connector.
Yeah, would provide, as the council agenda suggests, provide an alternate route for county residents to the south of the city, reducing traffic counts through the downtown, providing a second route for emergency access to the hospital, which is also important. Tom Gallagher of, I believe, is it Summit Engineering?
Yes. He owns Summit Engineering.
So thank you, Mr. Gallagher, for volunteering. He's going to, I think, either present, or at least this is his idea. And do we need about 20 million? Was that the figure I heard?
Yes, I think it's around 15 to 20 million that we would, that he is going to approach these congressional leaders to see if they could help us out with that. And I think that would make a big dent into the Ericart Boulevard. And then I'm going to present to the City Council a letter of support for this project and some of the reasons, and you just named them. I think one of the biggest ones is the secondary access to our hospital. When Lamoille Highway is closed due to accidents, which we all know happens on occasion, it closes off access to our hospital, or it impedes the traffic to get to the hospital, and that's dangerous for our community. And then we all know about the traffic and at 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock going up and down Lamoille Highway. So I know it wouldn't alleviate all traffic going over the summit, but at least it would give another route and give residents the ability to enter town and going to the north side of town rather than having to go all the way through 5th or 12th. So anyway, I think it would be an amazing thing for our community.
Sounds like a great start, and it pops up on the agenda today, so that'll be the first presentation. Jan, I know I'm going to let you go because you've got work to do, you and the other staff. Thank you so much for bringing them on today.
I do. I want to tell Addie and Michelle, thank you for joining. And then I just want to give one more shout out to Addie and Shelley Peterson, they were both on the committee for the cleanup, green up, and they did an absolutely amazing job, including the picking of the color of the T-shirts, right? Fluorescent pink, you can't beat it. And they did a great job, and they educated the public on the event, and we had a great turnout, and I just really want to give them kudos.
Oh, thank you, Jan. I'll end too the program with one thanks. I wanted to thank your animal control officer, Katie Litchfield. She's been on a couple of incidents where where we found a dog, or dogs just came to come to our yard, and she has helped get those dogs home, and it's terrific. And she has the best demeanor, and she's very caring. She's just a wonderful professional. So
she's an awesome gal.
Isn't she? Yep. I bet you get tons of compliments. Yep.
She's great at what she does.
Yeah. So thanks to everybody in animal control and animal shelter, and thanks city staff. Reach around and pat yourselves on the back. We appreciate it. Thank you, Jan Baum. Our city manager. Council will meet this afternoon at 4:00 if you'd like to join them for the meeting. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for our program, Elko Live Today.